30 seconds until we start. And if you're moving to another room, this would be a good time to do that.
I'll wait till after. Wow, what's going on with the numbers? It feels light. Oh, okay, they're shutting the doors.
Okay, I think we're going to get started.
Welcome, everyone. We're really happy that you've joined us today on this nice, snowy, sunny day. I think it's sunny. I haven't seen the outside in a couple of hours.
It's those lights.
Yeah, it's the lights. So if everybody can be seated at the round tables, that's fine. And I think this is probably going to be the group right now. Can we start with the first slide? Oh, is it ready? Who's our IT person? Okay, and can you go back a couple of slides, please? Okay, that's great, thank you. So my name's Leslie Gash. I'm the Senior Vice President of Development at Waterfront Toronto.
And I'm Pina Malazzi. I'm the Vice President of Design at Waterfront Toronto. And we're your hosts for the next 50 minutes.
Yes. So we were a little bit behind on the last session. We're going to try to make up some time this session so that you can spend more time in your breakout tables. We're just going to do a short intro to our goals and objectives and how this relates to the evaluation framework around the Master Innovation Development Plan. Then Andrew is going to come up and talk about transportation. Jesse did a very fulsome account of the development site plan in the bigger presentation. I hope that you all saw that in the plenary. And then we're going to entertain questions and answers, and then you're going to go into your breakout rooms, breakout tables, and then quickly report back at the end. A couple tables will report back. So this is the Quayside context. I think people all saw that earlier in the plenary, and showing Quayside between the two precinct plans of East Bayfront and Keating Channel. This is the Central Waterfront Secondary Plan. It was approved in 2003. And it addresses 4 areas. This is meant to be a phased approach to development and something that is very comprehensive and works with the rest of the city. The 4 areas are a network of spectacular parks and public spaces. So it's meant to be a destination of tourism, celebration, and enjoyment. Includes reserving the water's edge for the public use and public spaces at the bases of each of the north-south streets, preserve views of the lakes, and reflect the industrial heritage and dock wall legacy. The second one is removing barriers and creating connections. So it makes this part of the city fabric. Reconnect the city with the waterfront and connect the lake with the rest of the city. Promoting a green and clean environment. Sustainable modes of transportation. Flood protection for the portlands. And renaturalization of the mouth of the Don River. And then creating dynamic and diverse new communities. So places of beauty, quality, and opportunity for all, and accommodate a range of development plans for people to both live and work in a neighborhood setting. One of the precinct plans, East Bayfront, which is west of Small Street, approved in 2006, and it basically addresses most of the principles of the Central Waterfront Secondary Plan, Water's Edge Promenade, visual connections to the water, special places at the base of Jarvis, Sherbourne, and Parliament Street. And Parliament Street is what we're talking about today. Animated ground floors, sustainability, and a stepping down effect from the Gardner to the lake to help preserve views. Keating Channel, very similar principles to the secondary plan and to East Bayfront. What's mentioned more specifically here is about its connections to the adjacent neighborhoods and the fact that this becomes a gateway to the Portlands. And the integration of open spaces and infrastructure with the adjacent neighborhoods as well. So I'm going to turn this over to Pina now.
For those of you who were here a little earlier and heard Meg talk a little bit about our evaluation approach for the MIDP, we have been working on creating objectives based on a series of different buckets within the work that Sidewalk has been doing. So you can see on the right-hand side here a series of different topics. As you go to different breakouts, you'll hear a little bit of a deep dive into a few of those today. I'm going to take a couple minutes just to walk through some of the specifics around the mobility pillars of success. So one of the must-haves for the project is new mobility, and this particular slide just walks us through some of the criteria within the new mobility section. So including improving connections to the transit network with solutions for first last mile challenges where they may exist, increasing the use of electric vehicles to replace carbon-emitting vehicles. And this really ties to our aspirations for example, the Villiers Island Precinct Plan, where we have a aspiration for a near zero carbon-emitting transportation plan. So are there some innovations we can bring to Quayside that can be lessons for our work in the future to help us achieve those objectives? Leveraging the potential future benefits of autonomous vehicles. Are there if we plan ahead, are there benefits within the urban infrastructure that we can gain by through that? Reducing the cost and climate impact and convenience for the average transportation user, and also for the transportation of goods. And ensure open data protocols for sharing and compatibility with mobility data to improve the end user experience and protect privacy. There are also 4 other objectives within the mobility pillar: walkability, active transportation, transit, and network management. Very briefly, walkability and active transportation are about kind of optimizing the designs of our streets so that we can really encourage those users, creating more generous spaces, comfort for those users, and helping us push cycling to a year-round form of commuting in the city. Transit, assisting in the delivery of a innovative public-private funding strategy for the approved plan, and helping to connect and enhance to the citywide citywide transit infrastructure. Lastly, on management, exploring options for network management tools to make better use of transit infrastructure and significantly increase trips by mass transit. So is there innovation we can bring to the management system whereby, you know, maybe from your phone, you're able to get enough information where you're making smart choices about choosing some of the more sustainable modes. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Jesse and Andrew, probably mostly Andrew, because this presentation is really gonna focus on the mobility network.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So on behalf of Jesse, I'd like to welcome you all to this session on the Mobility Network. So you were here earlier at the plenary session, I think, where Jesse talked in great detail about what our site plan is like. So today I want to speak to you about the mobility aspects of that site plan. So the guiding principles for our mobility network are, as displayed here. Firstly, we want to make sure that if you're coming to Quayside or you're departing from Quayside, no matter where you're going, you can travel by any mode. Whether you are walking, whether you are cycling, whether you're taking transit, whether you're doing something more outre like a scooter, we want to make sure that there is an alternative to the private car to every trip. Not no private cars, where we've certainly made provision for private cars too, but we want to make sure that all modes are represented. To that end, our second principle is that where possible, we want to take more space for the public realm and away from private automobiles. We want our streets to be streets for people and not streets for cars. So where we can, we want to expand the public realm and give space back to other uses. And finally, while no one can be certain what the future can bring, we have some ideas about what the future can bring, namely autonomous vehicles. And we want to make sure that what we're building today is ready to take advantage of all the wonderful things that future technology has to offer. So those are the principles, and I will today be walking you through how they play out in practice. Let's begin by putting Quayside in context. So if you put a pin in a map, this map at Parliament Plaza, the blue area shows how far you could reach if you were going to walk for no fewer than 15, no more than 15 minutes. How could you get to Quayside? The blue area shows that. This is our first line of analysis. We want to make sure that people can walk to Quayside and within Quayside, that that's their primary mode of getting around. And so to do that, we're going to be investing heavily in a public realm and a pedestrian space that is pleasant and healthy. So, for instance, we're thinking about the Parliament underpass as the epitome of the sort of problem we're up against. If you ever cross the Parliament underpass beneath the rail bridge and then the Gardiner, it's a space that, in a word, is forbidding. It's dark, it's noisy, it can feel, it certainly is unpleasant, it can feel unsafe. So goes the Parliament underpass with the rest of the public realm. If we can make it lighter, more open, airier, have more art, if we can make it more pleasant, people will want to walk there. They'll want to see it. So that, in this way, we can encourage people to walk in Quayside and to it. So now let me superimpose over the walking district, the cycle district. This is how far we anticipate you'll be able to, if you want to take a trip of no more than 15 minutes by bike, can you reach Quayside? You can reach it from this blue zone. Toronto already has it can always be better, but frankly, there's a good bicycle network in the city. We want to tie into that, knit into it, and expand it throughout Quayside. And in that way, we'll be able to make sure that people can get to, if they can't walk to Quayside, then they'll seriously consider biking there too. Now, some people in the room are, 15 minutes is a reasonable goal for a novice cyclist. I'm sure there's at least one person here who considers themselves a serious cyclist. And a serious cyclist wouldn't flinch at a trip of 30 minutes or less. So for those people, we've got this zone. So already we've got a very wide district that you can reach by bicycle. Now, and one way we're going to make sure that that is everyone's choice is by, we'll be talking a little bit later about our snowmelt systems. We're going to make sure that our bike paths have got heated pavers so that they are ice-free year-round, so that no matter what month of the year it is, you can seriously consider biking to Quayside. So my next slide, to get ahead of myself, my next slide is about transit. And if I was going to use this map at this scale, I'd have to show the whole city as a blue zone, because what we want is to, as you may know, the City of Toronto has already got an approved transit plan for the Eastern Waterfront. And we've looked at it and we've said, you know what? This is something we cannot improve upon. We agree that the approved transit plan is the best plan for Quayside and the Eastern Waterfront. So when it is built, you can see that Quayside will be connected to the transit hub of Union in the west and the forthcoming transit hub of East Harbor in the east, as well as up through Cherry, you'll get to the King Street and the broader streetcar network. It'll be possible with a transfer or two to reach Quayside with a TTC fare from anywhere in the city, which is something that we're very excited about. So all we need to do is find a way to get we're working with our partners right now to consider ways to accelerate delivery of that approved transit plan. The transit itself doesn't need innovation. All that needs innovation is a way to get it to happen faster. Let's drill down into these principles some more. So this is Quayside at a pedestrian scale. And the map, it's a little bit hard to read at this scale, for which I apologize, but you can see we've worked out the distances it would take to walk from point to point within Quayside, and they're quite short. We want to make sure that when you're traveling within Quayside, that pedestrian travel is your first choice. Not necessarily your only choice. We've also, as you can see on this diagram, if you squint, I suppose, that we've got bike share, scooter share, e-bike share. We've got lots of opportunities here for you to transfer to other modes that can improve your range and make sure that you can travel farther as part of the trip. I couldn't say more about this, but I see a hook coming, so I'll keep it moving faster. The bike network. The Martin Goodman Trail already runs along the Queen's Quay. In the future, we anticipate that it's going to go right across Parliament Slip all the way over to Cherry. That'll complement the existing city plan for a multi-use trail along Lakeshore. So that's 2 dedicated high-speed lanes for cyclists that run east-west along Quayside, combined with north-south links at Sherburne and Cherry. And for cyclists that are willing to move at pedestrian speed, there'll also be north-south connections at Bonnycastle and Small and at Trinity. So there'll be lots of ways to move around or within the site by bike. Once you arrive, you'll be able to park your bike at ample bike parking facilities, whether that's bike racks on the street, the bike hubs at our interchange. We'll have a barge out in Parliament Slip that is going to be just for bike parking, which is an innovation we saw in Amsterdam and want to bring to the city. We'll have an interchange where it says bike hub, beneath sites 1 and 2. That is going to be also for cars. So when you come to Quayside by car, we anticipate that you will drive into via Bonnycastle, you will drive below grade, you will park your car, and then you will be able to move into other modes, whether that's LRT right at the corner or into bike share or bike hub. And so that bike park, the parking there at the interchange will have facilities to charge your electric vehicles. So we will have all sorts of seamless multimodal transportation all accommodated through that interchange. We're quite proud of it. Transit. So if the approved plan is built, this is what our vision of what it would look like, which is you'll have traffic, the streetcar will come along Queens Quay from Union Station all the way across Parliament Slip to Cherry, and there streetcars, some of them will be able to go north through what is now the Cherry, the Distillery Loop up into King Street. You'll also be able to go south down Cherry to Commissioners and beyond to East Bayfront. Sharp-eyed TTC fans will note that you cannot see the 72 PAPE bus on this map. That's because we think that it's redundant to the LRT, so the TTC won't run it. Although the TTC will continue to run the 65 bus south through the site. But I must emphasize that we don't plan to own or operate or privatize any transit in the site. It's all going to be in the TTC's hands. And what that means is it's going to be up to the TTC to dictate and determine its own service patterns. We don't presume we know better than they do how to do that. So this is just our vision of what the TTC service pattern in the site might be. What does this feel like on the ground? So this is Queens Quay in 2025. The right-hand side of this image is the south. So you can see you've got ample pedestrian space, mirrored by ample pedestrian space on the other side of the street. To the north of the pedestrian space in the south, we've got the Martin Goodman Trail, which has been expanded by 1.4 meters to a full 5 meters across to make it more comfortable and convenient for cyclists. Not pictured, but under the ground as our heating system to keep it ice-free. Then we've got streetcar slash LRT running in its own designated right-of-way. North of that, we have Queens Quay for automobiles, the traditional street. You will note we only have a single lane. So we have removed one lane from automobiles so that other space can be given to these other purposes. So cars along Queens Quay will run westbound only. It's one-way westbound. North of the westbound travel lane is our dynamic curb. What is that, I hear you ask? Well, in the past, we've designated what usage the street is to have through hard coding it in infrastructure, through concrete and curbs. Technology means that we have new options available to us now. We can now embed within the street itself, we can embed lights and devices to show what that purpose of the street is. And so, to the left, you see dynamic curbs. A car can drive in, pause, pick up or drop off passengers, and then move on. That's appropriate during periods of peak use. But during periods of non-peak use, what we have is on the right, is it's with changing the light pattern on the ground and rearranging the mobile street furniture, we can quickly and easily reclaim space that was formerly for cars and turn it into space for the public. And whether that's pop-up kiosks, whether that's street furniture, whether that's street art, the only limit is what the neighborhood wants to make of it. But we'll be able to fluidly rearrange the use of the space on the street, giving it to cars when necessary, but not otherwise. So, how do cars get around the site? If you are coming from the west, little has changed. Some cars will continue just past the site via Lakeshore, which is the primary artery. Others will turn at Bonnycastle and enter the interchange I described earlier, where they can then either park their car for the day, arrange for off-site transport for long-term parking, and then they can switch modes to transit or pedestrian use or bike share. If you're coming from the south or the west, things are slightly different. Unfortunately, it's not possible for that traffic to turn left at Small to get to Queens Quay because it's simply not safe to have a left-hand turn at Small so close to the intersection at Parliament. So people coming from those directions are going to have to take, and it's circuitous, but only slightly so. They'll have to proceed perhaps another 100, 150 meters to Bonnycastle, at which point they can loop backwards around onto Lakeshore or can use Bonnycastle to enter the interchange and the site. Now you may be wondering, Andrew, why does it say 2025 up there? The answer is because this is, in 2025, we expect that legacy vehicles are going to still be regular, but in the future, we will have autonomous vehicles. So legacy versus autonomy vehicles. Very, very simply, a legacy vehicle is what we're all most familiar with, and the most salient feature is a human is driving that car. An autonomous vehicle, a computer is driving that car, which has many benefits, but the one that I want to highlight for you is that the robot driving that car will always obey the rules of the road. It will always obey the speed limit. It cannot but do these things. And whatever else that means, what it means is everyone sharing the road with that car is much safer, particularly the most vulnerable road users, pedestrians and cyclists. We think that autonomous vehicles are going to be a step change in urban mobility, not just for drivers, but for everyone else. So, in 2031, what we're taking the step of is we are taking some streets and we are going to anticipate that they are going to be AV only. That's true eastbound and southbound and westbound. It's a change we're very excited about. Now, everything I've said so far has been premised on the idea that there is a no connection between Parliament and Queens Quay, and that if you're coming on Queens Quay, there's no connection across the slip. That is Sidewalk's proposal, but it's not the only proposal. The existing precinct plan looks like this. There is a road connection at Queens Quay, and there's one at Parliament. So we've got the Sidewalk vision on one side, we've got the city's approved vision on the other. In between, there's all sorts of possibilities. So this is our vision. You could change it. You could have the Queens Quay connection, but no Parliament connection. The Parliament connection, but no Queens Quay connection. A Parliament and a Queens Quay connection, but preserving Parliament Plaza as much as possible as a public space. We have our ideas, the city has their ideas, and we are having a fruitful conversation that's going to be continuing over the coming weeks for how to determine what the best way to serve the most users is. And it's a conversation we're looking forward to. To wrap things up, our goal, first and foremost, has been to make sure that the mobility network, the streets that we have, are not streets for cars, they're not streets for cyclists, they're not even streets for pedestrians, they're streets for people. They're streets for all modes and for easy transfer between those modes. That was one thing we aimed to do. The other is to make sure that the mobility network is pleasant enough and comfortable enough that people aren't just traveling to get to A to B. The mobility network is a place where people want to be in its own right because it's just that pleasant and exciting. So I hope that you will agree that that is something, that's a promise that we are delivering on. So with that, I'll thank you for your time and take your questions.
So we'll take a few questions now. And I think Haban is walking around with a mic. So why don't we start over there?
Yeah, just one question, one comment actually, is on autonomous vehicles. I think one of the outcomes of it could be more vehicles on the road because anybody then has the ability to drive, which right now it is restricted. You could have a 5-year-old that could drive with an autonomous vehicle. So I'm not sure whether that's going to be an answer. But the other question I have is, and I've asked it in other sessions too, is the role of sidewalk Sidewalk Toronto after the project is complete? Like, will they still maintain a role within with sidewalk will they still maintain a role with Quayside, or will they what will be what will be their business plan after that time? And also the public spaces in there, will those public spaces be owned by the public, or will they be privately owned by developers or by Sidewalk? Thank you.
I'm happy to take that and work backwards. I can say very clearly the public spaces, the land, for example, that is currently owned by the City of Toronto, dedicated parkland space like Silo Park, spaces like the Waterfront Promenade, unquestionably remain owned by the city. That's incredibly important for us. That's incredibly important for Waterfront Toronto, everyone involved. Similarly, for the kind of transportation rights away, similar kind of condition. In terms of the management and sort of the long-term piece, as you know, we're still working through the details of what sort of the plan itself is and what the operating models for the different elements would be. I think one thing that is really important is that this will be a neighborhood like others in Toronto. It's not like there's going to be sort of one overarching entity that is managing this place. There'll be homes, there's property managers. Those property managers won't be Sidewalk Labs. There will be, you know, management of transportation that'll involve the city. There'll be management of parks that'll involve the Parks Department. There will be ways in which Sidewalk might play a role in some of those activities to try to help ensure that this vision and sort of the objectives can be achieved, and that we can manage the technology here in an effective way towards the public benefit. And a lot of those details will be coming in the next kind of set of documents that we're sharing as part of the MIDP.
And I will just add, and we're not doing necessarily a deep dive on public realm today because we did at Roundtable 3. However, the objectives that we talked about for mobility, there are similar objectives around public realm. And the question that you asked about ownership, there is a requirement in our objectives that the dedicated parkland and roads remain in public ownership. So I think both Waterfront Toronto and Sidewalk Labs are committed to that. Another question?
Thank you. How many jobs are they going to development with this project with the transit?
Sorry, was that how many jobs are going to be created?
Yeah.
In terms of the transit system, I'm not sure that jobs per se will be created. I guess insofar as the TTC is constructing, there might be some. I'm afraid I haven't quantified that.
Yeah. What we can say is that in terms of this approach to mobility, we see is really important to the type of mix of uses and the significant number of jobs that we see balanced with housing in the neighborhood. In order to have a great neighborhood for jobs, you need to have a great mix of transit and a great set of public realm that can support the people that are living and working there. And so this mobility system is very much in service of that.
So we'll take two more questions. So the two folks that have the mic, we'll start with Haban.
So looking at current trends and what's inevitable to happen is, given the electric powered vehicles, there's going to be a lot more various personalized electric vehicles, whether they're scooters or hoverboards or whatever, bikes, whatever. You mentioned a higher speed bike path. Do you anticipate that to be a separation of these higher speed electric personal vehicles and the traditional bicycles, just so that that's probably going to be the future requirement?
So the first thing to say is that we're not the City of Toronto Transportation Department, and they've got the responsibility to determine how space is used, and we wouldn't want to usurp that. But our imagination is that certainly as a mobility person, people moving at higher speeds should not be doing, like on an e-scooter, shouldn't be doing it in spaces for pedestrians, because that poses a risk to pedestrians. So a bike lane is a good place for people that are neither moving at the high speed of a car nor the low speed of a pedestrian. It's good for cycles and it's good for scooters. And with the Martin Goodman Trail being wider, it'll be possible for cyclists and scooters to possibly share that space. But I'll reiterate for the record that as of right now, scooters are not street legal in Canada, and if the City of Toronto wants to change that, that's their prerogative.
So we'll take one last question, and then we'll go into the breakouts right at the front here.
Hi, actually, I have one question and one sort of interest question. How does vehicle to grid factor into this plan, since there's going to be a lot less parking for vehicle? Have you considered that? And second, I'm just kind of curious about the heated bike trails. Is that just for that section? And how do you go about heating economically and efficiently a bike trail in Canada?
So the way that you can, I'll answer the second part and I'll defer the first part. So as far as the bike trail network, you know, our mandate is for Quayside, so that is what we're proposing to heat. Admittedly, a bike trail where only one part of it is ice-free and the rest isn't is of limited utility, but what we hope to do is to demonstrate the efficaciousness of this technology so that it could be moved up to scale. And as Jesse just spoke in the plenary session, we want to do it through non-greenhouse gas emission ways where possible, but it's going to be electric, it's going to be waste heat. There are ways that we think that we can do it without, you know, without it being catastrophic to the environment. But to the extent that we can shift people's travel to bikes in all seasons, that's already a win for the environment if it shifts travel away from more polluting modes like the private car. So that's all I have to say about that.
With respect to your first question, I think we want to understand it a little bit better. So what we'll do is we'll be roaming around. Why don't we take a second to just dig into that a bit with you? I think what we'll do is move to breakouts. We started this a little late, so we're probably going to end just a little past 12:30. We will go into breakouts for 10 minutes, and there's some questions on your table. For some of the tables that are just one or two people, we recommend you just move over to another table unless you want to stay intimate. And then we'll report back and think about some of the kind of neat or innovative or great feedback that you have, because we're going to look for a couple tables to report back in about 10 minutes.
I'd just like to give everyone a 2-minute warning, and then we'll take a couple of tables to report back. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're gonna regroup. Is everyone good to regroup for just a few minutes before we stop for lunch? Are we good? I'm looking for nods. Do I see nods? Okay, good. Any groups want to volunteer to tell us a little bit about the conversation you had? If you don't volunteer, we will point to you, so. Okay, good.
Yeah, hi. Everybody kind of nodded around the table at our last point to the question, from recommendations from other jurisdictions, and that is, we talked about Montreal. They shut down Rue St. Catherine on Sundays to pedestrian use. Shut it down. There's no cars, or make it, when it purpose built for, the gentleman here suggested the automated bollards, in Washington. Pop them, make it so the entire Quayside can be shut down, on Sundays or for events like the Taste of the Danforth or something like that, and just make it pedestrian only.
That's a great recommendation. Jesse, did you get it? Okay, Narissa, I'm going to call on your table next. That is Narissa, isn't it?
So excitement part. So what we thought was to create more places for pedestrians where we have like drive-free places, drive-free spaces for people, mixed use and vibrant, so that we don't need a car. That is something that it really excites us about some neighborhood like that. Transport, like great parks and great connections from with respect to transport. What we have missed, it seems, is that we need to provide facilities to ensure that the infrastructure is safe. For example, we are promoting the use of bikes, but we have any infrastructure to ensure that the bikes are, like, tires are not stolen. Like, one key point, I'll never buy a bike. The family space, how do we keep family spaces protected and safe? How do we ensure that the pedestrians are protected from cars or from even skateboards? Like, if I go to a place which is activated for a community, I should not be thinking about people just throwing skateboards at my face. Yes, practical, right? So we want to ensure that development provides everything provides something for every demographic group. If I have senior citizens with me, there should be something that they want as well. And provisions for first aid, since we are providing a safe place for people, we also need to ensure that we have some facilities like APR, first aid kits, like we have in several DDC stations. So these are some of the areas, things.
Because we only have a few tables, I think we should just go through all of them, because this is pretty fantastic. So we will go here next.
Hi. So we're excited about the access to the water. And Parliament Plaza could be something that drives people right down Parliament to the water, and that's very exciting to us. The bridge extension, I suppose, to Villiers Island was another thing that was highlighted as just, a great way to connect Quayside to other exciting places to explore. We also love the idea of the heated bike lanes and, the ability for people to cycle actually in the winter to kind of break down that myth that it's impossible in Toronto. Some concerns we have, ensuring that we have safety with these dynamic roads and movable barriers and things, because, the Queen's Quay, unfortunately, drivers get confused. And on the King Street Pilot is another example. When people start seeing 30 signs, drivers start to see no signs. So how do we ensure that dynamic roads are actually safe roads as well? That's a concern for us. The other thing, we would love to see somebody be able to kayak into Parliament Plaza, drop off their kayak, and walk right up out of the water into Quayside. So let's not forget about boat access and kind of ensuring people are using the water as part of Parliament Plaza in the neighborhood. So, yeah.
I'm going to add to that. You know what I really want to do? Be able to leave the office at 20 Bay, get on the LRT, go to Parliament Plaza, take a kayak for lunch into the new river mouth, and then come back and go back to work over lunch. Wouldn't that be amazing? Oh, yeah. We don't take lunch. Okay.
Well, this is more or less an observation rather than a comment or critique. We see the project as being an urban-driven project for urban living persons. In other words, it's like saying to people from Etobicoke and Scarborough, don't come here, because it's a very ambitious objective to have AVs by 2025, only addressing coming to the project. So I see carbon-driven vehicles, particularly for suburbanites who might want to come to this area, being told don't come because you're not modernizing your carbon-free the carbon-free objectives. So how does that match up with your if you may call your view of all to come here?
Well, I think we appreciate your comment. I suggest maybe you and Jesse connect afterwards, and you can chat a little bit more about that. And maybe just before we wrap up, we'll take the last table here. You guys are small, but I'm sure you're got tons of great feedback.
A few points that was brought up is maybe addressing the changing weather of Toronto in the next 10 years or so, how it might have much less winter days than what we do see now. And it will be interesting to see how that affects planning of the transportation within Quayside. And also, I notice as a person who lives in the lakeshore that wind is a much bigger issue than a lot of other weather. And I would love to see some ideas proposed within that neighborhood to prevent an excessive amount of wind, because that's a problem within the neighborhood, especially in the wintertime, which is very painful. Snow is actually not such a big issue for me. They melt pretty quick. And also some ideas to consider, the integrated. I see there's a lot of point of connection with the city that's possible with this district, and also in terms of TDC, maybe also building a little more infrastructure around these stations. It's something I see in a lot of high-density cities. I don't see that a lot in Toronto, and maybe this is a site where that is possible. Having either vendor spots or even infrastructure being able to be really closely linked to the stations. And that might also spring up new opportunities and also provide an example for the rest of the city. And I think that's what this site is for.
That's a great suggestion. I think, is there anyone we missed before we wrap up? Okay, let's, did you want to say something? Sure. Okay, take us into break.
I'll just quickly say our table sort of noticed that there was not a lot of attention put on ride-sharing programs such as Uber, Lyft, even taxis. And our table was sort of in the agreement that we wanted just more pedestrian TTC transportation in the area, but like it's hard to ignore that ride-sharing is very popular in the city, and most of the cars that do drive by have the Uber or Lyft symbol. So would it be possible of putting like stations for like each residence building, or like little pickup drop-off areas where Ubers can easily get in and out, but they're not taking up the full like route and area?
Great suggestion. I suggest you guys connect afterwards and talk a little bit more about that, because I know that Sidewalk is certainly thinking about those modes as well. We couldn't cover everything in 15 minutes, but there is some thought there. So I suggest, Andrew, you guys chat. So with that, I think we're going to wrap up the morning half of our roundtable. We are, for anyone who wants to go to all 4 plenary breakouts, we are coming back here again for a second half this afternoon. I think we meet back here at 1:30 for the plenary session, where Meg and Jesse are gonna take us through kind of a broad kind of overview. And then the next breakout session starts at 3:30? Is that right? 3:10, sorry. 3:10 and then 4:10. And then we wrap up at 5. So either come back for 1:30 or 3:10. Thank you, everybody.